Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. We're going to be starting off the series of I Spit on Your Grave with the original from 1978. Now this was a very notorious movie back in the day because this movie, in the UK at least, was banned. It was banned in a lot of countries. It was known as a video nasty here in the UK back in the early 1980s to the mid 1980s, and it was a part of a group of movies that were all banned for all different reasons, mostly exploitation, rape and revenge, and I Spit on Your Grave was one of the most notorious of the lot. Just with any movie on the list, on the video nasty list, everybody wanted to see this list of movies, even if they were really bad. So I think when you label a movie a video nasty, that's when people want to see it. The film opens up to Jennifer driving to her nearest gas station, and it shows you Johnny, Andy and Stanley, who are just a bunch of guys hanging around the gas station, although I don't think Andy and Stanley work there. It seems to be only Johnny that does the working. But when you see Johnny for the first time, he seems like the normal one. He seems like a person that looked kind of nice compared to the other two. Jennifer also seems nice, she seems pleasant, she gives them the time of day, and then she drives off to her cabin. There's not much dialogue in the first 10 minutes of the movie, it just shows Jennifer in the locations that she's going to be in most of the movie, and it kind of sets the tone for the film. Matthew comes to deliver Jennifer's groceries. Matthew asks her what she does. She says she's a writer and she's at the cabin specifically to write her next novel. So it's good that we've got Matthew there to explain to us, or at least ask her the questions so that she can explain to the audience why she's there and what she does. Again, Jennifer seems really nice. She seems nice to Matthew, and at the same time Matthew also seems nice at this point in time. Matthew then bumps into the guys at the gas station and he kind of brags about seeing Jennifer's tits, and the guys are like, when are you going to get laid, Matthew? And he's like, well, I really like Jennifer. So they've got some sort of idea that they're going to try and get Matthew laid with Jennifer. We see more of Jennifer taking in the scenery. We see her taking a little boat trip on the lake, of her own private boat and her own lake basically. Well, while she's writing her novel though, the Andy and Stanley come in a little motorboat and they just keep spinning her around, which kind of annoys Jennifer. It seems they were there just to scope the place out first of all. The next day the same thing happens. The guys come around, they start circling Jennifer on the boat, really annoying her, really antagonising her as well. And if you notice, there's not a stunt person in sight. Now this is when things get really harsh. The build up to what's described as the rape revenge scenes, the build up to the rape scene was completely unprovoked, and it didn't give us any tension whatsoever, didn't give the audience any tension. It seems like this film was just made to shock us and to give us a rape scene, and that's it. Obviously it came out at the same time as the exploitation movies, so they wanted to give us something that they thought we would like, but today watching it you're like, why would you do that? All of this just to get Matthew laid? After the first rape, she walked away thinking that was the last of it. She was shaking, she was naked, and unfortunately for her, when she got into the woods, the guys were all there again and they attacked her for the second time. But again, she got back up after they left her because she thought that was it, and she managed to get back to the cabin without her boat. And when she got back to the cabin, the guys were there again, and then they gave her a third attack. Even though Johnny seemed like the leader, Stanley looked like the worst person. Although he didn't look like he raped her, he was the most violent towards her. He was the most depraved towards her. It just seems like he was the leader, whereas Johnny acted like the leader. After they've done what they wanted to do to Jennifer, they go and tell Matthew. They all leave, they all go outside, but they tell Matthew to go in and stab her and kill her, so they give him the knife and tell him to go in and do the business. They obviously didn't want to go in and do it because they didn't want to have blood on their hands. But Matthew being Matthew, he goes in, he couldn't do it, he just wiped some blood on the knife to make it look as if he killed her, and he went out and told them that he'd done it. And them being stupid, they just accepted that and they drove off in the boat. The whole scene from start to finish for this rape scene, it lasted around 30 minutes and it was a very hard 30 minutes to watch. Jennifer manages to get some strength back. She goes in for a shower, she gets her clothes on, and she's just starting to build up all that strength again. It looks like some time is also passing as well because she's getting outside. You can see her scars are starting to heal as well. And at the same time, her boat manages to wash back up on shore just where she's living. She starts writing her novel again. Wait, what? Instead of going to get help or speak to the police or at least leaving the town, she writes her novel again. It's confirmed by the guys that 2 weeks had passed since the ordeal, and they start to wonder what's happening. They're starting to get worried that maybe nobody saw the body, nobody can smell anything from a couple of miles away, nobody's reported anything, so they're starting to think about Matthew. Did you really kill her, Matthew? What really happened? And he's making up all these excuses as to what he says happened. They still kind of believe him, but they want him to go and check on the body. He refuses to do that because he just doesn't want to see the body. Instead, Andy and Stanley go on their motorboat to go and see if she's dead, but before they even get there, they're on the boat and they see her just sitting against a tree, not smiling, not scared, not doing anything, just sitting there looking at them. And they go back and tell Johnny that Matthew didn't kill her, and they beat his ass and send him away. They don't want to speak to him again. Jennifer then goes to church because she wants to ask for forgiveness because she's about to be sliced and diced. Just before the revenge scenes, we also find out that Johnny has a wife and kids, which makes his act even worse than it was before. After getting called up to the house to deliver more groceries, Matthew is the first on Jennifer's revenge list. When he gets there, she lures him into the trees and then she seduces him, trying to get him to drop the knife. After he drops the knife, she then hangs him from a tree as well, in a really well made scene, especially for back in 1978. Next up, she convinces Johnny to get into a car with him. I don't know why he would, but he did anyway. And after they get out of the car, she held him at gunpoint and forced him to take off his clothes. But after he thinks he seduces her, she then takes him back into the house, into a bath. And as they're talking for a little bit, what could only be described as her chopping off his penis. That's all you can really assume that she done. And then he obviously dies from blood loss. I will be honest, this is probably the most brutal scene in the film, out with the rape obviously. And it's unfortunate that you don't see as much as you think, because you have to leave it all to the imagination, because it was under the water, it was in the bath. She puts the knife under the bath and you just hear a little noise and then the blood starts coming, so you can only assume what happened, although that is probably good enough. The finale was very weird, and I think it was weirdly edited as well. You've got Andy and Stanley that go out to the lake on the boat, and as they're on the boat, you can see Jennifer waiting for them, and then all of a sudden Andy's gone and it's only Stanley that's on the boat. So Jennifer then swims onto the boat. He doesn't do anything. She pushes him off and then she starts circling him. Well, Andy then pops up in the woods behind the trees with an axe, just going, ooh, what's happening? And so she starts circling Stanley. Andy goes out to try and rescue him, even though he can swim on his own. And she manages to get the axe off of Andy, stabs Andy in the back with the axe and kills him, circles Stanley a little bit more, because again, Stanley is the worst of them all. And he manages to swim over to the engine part of the boat, and she turns it on and she completely mutilates him, and she just drives off on the motorboat, and then that's the end of the movie. It was a very abrupt ending. I thought the ending was going to be a little bit better than that, but it seems like they were obviously in a rush. For a 45-year-old movie, I think it holds up better than I thought it would. I remember first seeing the movie thinking, what was all the fuss about? Why was it banned? It wasn't great. Obviously I know why it's banned now, because of the rape scenes, but that's the only reason the movie is more notorious and more well known than it should be. It's not a great film. It wasn't well made. The acting wasn't great in it either, but for a 45-year-old movie, like I said, it does stand up. Comparing it to the other exploitation movies of the 70s and 80s, the other 70s and 80s movies that were banned and are on the video nasty list, I think this one kind of stands head and shoulders above the rest. That's not saying much, because most of the movies on the list are terrible, but for this one to stand out, it's actually not too bad of a movie. You can tell though that the movie was only made to jump on the bandwagon of the exploitation film. You can tell the movie had no story to it whatsoever. Yes, 45 years later it's got a bit of a cult following, but without that cult following, it would just be a movie that features guys who rape a woman for absolutely no reason, and she kind of gets her just desserts. She kind of gets them back in revenge scenes that are not great, but they're okay. I think my biggest issue with this film, and it's due to the writing and the script, is the lack of urgency and the lack of common sense. After she was raped, these guys, being guys, you would think they would make sure that she's dead. First of all, they don't do that. And then when she survives, She doesn't go and get help, she doesn't go to the police, she doesn't leave, she decides to stay and write her novel again. And I've just thought that was bizarre, so I think it was very unrealistic. It's a realistic type of movie as well, but it was played out in an unrealistic manner. Overall though guys, it was an okay film. I think it's a film that I would still watch again in the future. It's not an unwatchable movie, but it kind of stands the test of time, which is strange because I didn't expect it to, but it was okay, and that was it. So what are your thoughts on the movie, guys? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you know it was part of the video nasty list? If you were from the UK, leave your comments down below, guys. Let me know what you thought of this movie, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.
I'll be right back. What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played in the cat?
Someone's in the back!